Hey everybody, this is Jason Ostrowski, and welcome to another episode of the Everything Real Estate Podcast. Today's episode is a special one. We're talking the state of real estate with someone who has truly seen this business from every angle. My guest is Chris Kelly, President and CEO of HomeServices of America, one of the nation's largest and most respected real estate companies. Chris's impressive career spans both legal and leadership roles with some of the most recognized names in the industry. Over the years, Chris has helped to guide real estate brands like Reese Nichols, Dave Perry Miller, Williams True, Ebby Halliday, Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, and of course, HomeServices of America. In this conversation, we'll delve deep into Chris's thoughts on the current state of play within the real estate landscape, where Chris sees us headed in the near and distant futures, and what opportunities might be emerging for agents, brokerages, and consumers alike as the industry evolves and changes. You won't want to miss today's episode as we're breaking down the state of real estate with my very special guest, Chris Kelly. He is the president and CEO of HomeServices of America. His name is Chris Kelly. Chris, it's a true pleasure to get to do this with you today. How's it going?
It's great, Jay. Thanks for inviting me on. Super excited to be with you today. Really,
I don't know what strings we pulled to get you on here, but obviously I'm thrilled to have you here. Like I said,
you sent me an email. That's how it works, right? That's what we tell everybody in the business. You have to ask for the business, and you sent me an email, and I said, "Yeah, let's do it. It'd be great."
You know what? You shouldn't tell people that because now you're going to be inundated with podcasts worldwide. But I know you're a really busy man, so I'm gonna say thank you for doing this in advance, and to maximize our time together, I'm just gonna hop right into it if it's okay, because I have a million questions for you today. All right.
That sounds great.
All right. So recently, Gino Blafari stepped down as president and CEO of HomeServices of America, and you picked up the mantle in April of this past year. So what's it like to take on the responsibility of being the new CEO of such a large company at such an important time in our industry?
Yeah, it was, the good thing is I have been part of HomeServices since 2007. So having an opportunity to kind of essentially grow up in this company, and I've had different roles at operating company levels at HomeServices as well. Gino and others made it very easy for that kind of transition. So there wasn't like some abruptness. Sometimes when you step into a new role, Jay, as you know, like it can feel very abrupt. You know, when I went from prior role down to Dallas and took on the role of CEO at Ebby Halliday, that was a little more abrupt. I was an outsider coming in. It was something new. I had not been there before. Having been at HomeServices, having the opportunity to work under Gino and work very closely with our leadership team, it was a fairly smooth transition. And yeah, there's a lot going on in the industry at the time, but we'd all been kind of working together as a team over this last several years to kind of work our way through it. So in all honesty, it was a fairly smooth transition that I'm really, really grateful for.
From a leadership perspective, obviously everybody has their style. But in researching you and getting to know you a little bit through other podcasts that you've done, through articles, is that I was listening to a podcast recently that had Brene Brown on, who specializes in leadership. And you kind of just strike me as that Brene Brown type of leadership style where you're just very authentic and you just put it out there. And you seem like you're very easy to talk to. Obviously, we're just meeting each other for the first time. You seem like just a great, authentic human being.
Well, I sincerely appreciate that. I guess that all goes back to my parents and the fact that I have, three sisters. My wife is one of three sisters. I've been surrounded by some really, I think about our industry, right? Like about how much, we have seen this industry really be an empowerment to female entrepreneurs as well too. And so I'm really thankful for my background of growing up with some really strong women that kind of said, this is the type of leadership that really matters in this world when you're kind of trying to lead an organization that isn't male dominated. It isn't necessarily female dominated. It's both. Right. And so that's one of the things I really like about this industry. And I have been very fortunate to always be very cognizant of being surrounded by smart people. I'm just one of those believers that it is all about the team. You surround yourself with really smart, intelligent, passionate people, really, really good things happen. And that's really what we've always tried to do at any level I've been at Home Services. If I've got really smart people around me telling me, hey, this is what I think is going on, this is what I think we should do. If you listen to those folks, usually really good things, happen. And there's a great Steve Jobs quote, which is like, I don't hire smart people to tell them what to do. I hire smart people for them to tell me what to do. And I think if you really kind of follow that, I mean, you got to trust your own instincts and your own gut. But I think if you follow that principle and you empower the people around you to feel like they can be honest, to feel like they can say what's on their mind, hey, look, I think we might be heading down the wrong road here, you will make less mistakes. You will have better outcomes when you are surrounded with people that are really comfortable expressing their opinions and thoughts as well, too.
Well, that leads me into my next question for you, because that sets up nobody gets to where they are by themselves. We all have help along the way. So with so many people now looking to your leadership to guide our path into the future of real estate, there's a lot of pressure with the weight of your responsibility day to day. And so is there someone or multiple people in particular that you look to for guidance in your thought process or decision making when facing those difficult decisions?
Yeah, I think I have been really lucky to have some really good mentors over the years. And it's sometimes someone can be a mentor, whether they know it or not to you, right? Like they can be someone you don't even know. But, I think back to the folks that I've had a chance to kind of grow up under. And when you mentioned I was in private practice, don't hold it against me. I'm a recovering lawyer at this point. But when I was in private practice, a really young attorney, like maybe a year out of law school, I walked into the office of the managing partner, and his name's Dan Flanagan. And I brought him a problem that we were having on a particular case, particular client. And he looked at me, and I'll do the PG version of what he said back to me. But what he said was, he goes, that's a really interesting problem. Maybe I should hire a lawyer to tell me the answer. And I walked back to my office, and at first you're kind of irritated, like, well, that was rude. And then by the time I had walked that 30 feet, I'd gone, he's absolutely right. I'm responsible for not just bringing people problems. I'm responsible for bringing people solutions, right? And so that has had a huge impact on me. And then when I went to Home Services in 2007, I worked at our operating company, Reese Nichols, under Jerry Reese. Jerry Reese is one of the most kindest, authentic leaders I've ever met. And, he would, have all these little nuggets. And, one of them was like, look, when you're in doubt, tell the truth. And, that was something that was really imprinted on me as well. And then when I was at Debbie Halliday, I was surrounded by some really amazing leaders down there who really taught me about how important it is to bring heart to this business. It's not just enough to make the right business decision in real estate, because what you all do is so emotional with the client, right? It's not just a financial transaction. We always talk about it's emotional, it's relational. It's the same thing at the brokerage agent relationship, brokerage, mortgage, title, insurance, all of that. And really seeing how they lead with heart, lasting impact. And then working under Ron Peltier, the original founder of Home Services, how passionate he was. He would often get emotional on stage as he talked about the business, talked about people. I love the fact that, you shouldn't be afraid to show how you really feel about something. And then working with Gino, he was truly the master of relationships. When you think about someone who's been in the business this long and how many relationships that he has formed at a really intimate level with so many people, that is something that you want to strive to kind of, you're never going to be able to achieve it to the way that they did it, but you want to say, okay, I see the importance of doing it that way. So I've really been lucky to work under a lot of great people, and they've all kind of added to it over the years.
It's astounding to me, the level of leadership, like you had just mentioned those names, and they're iconic names in our business, and following, in their footsteps. And I remember last year I was on my way to the shore, so Jersey Shore near me, and I got this call from California. I didn't recognize the number, so I never answered. And it was Gino. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't pick up Gino's call.
Hey partner, how you doing?
Yeah, exactly. So I called him back, and he was gracious enough to answer. And, just that couple minutes that we spent on the phone together left such a lasting impression on me. And so I'm sure you think of that from a leadership perspective. What you do in the day-to-day and how you treat people goes such a long way. And you've had those before you to kind of guide that path for you. I want to talk about just the state of the industry, if we can do that. And so we've had, within the past year and a half, 2 years, we've had so many rule changes, lawsuits, construction costs have skyrocketed. Affordability is the number one issue of our time right now, in my opinion. You got portals out there. AI has come on the scene, and now there's no turning back. So if you had to choose the most crucial challenge facing the real estate industry right now, as of today, what is the thing you worry about most when you lay your head on your pillow at night?
Yeah, I really think, you went through all the different changes, and I was even here during the Great Recession. And then we saw over the last 10 years, let's say even pre-pandemic and lawsuit settlement and rule changes, billions of dollars have been put into our industry under an attempt to try and separate the consumer from the agent, right? Trying to get in the middle of that relationship under the false pretense that the consumer wants to get away from that relationship. Those have largely been wasted, billions of dollars. And so when I worry about the state of our industry going forward, the biggest negative impact that could happen is we do it to ourselves. And so, you mentioned again with my attorney background, I have been astonished how willing different parties right now have been within our industry to go affirmatively and voluntarily running into litigation, right? Like, you haven't had enough of this over the last several years that now all this infighting is happening. And so what concerns me is when we as an industry, we as brokerages, we as agents, when we stop doing, okay, what is right for the consumer, what is best for the consumer, and it becomes about what is best for us, what's best for me, a very more of a, internal selfish kind of perspective. That's what concerns me. And we're seeing the bubbles of that right now where, hey, it's good for me to do my business in this way, even though I know it will have this cascade effect to some point where a consumer is standing in the middle of the street saying, geez, it's a real pain in the ass to work with you guys now based on the way that you have structured this. I will now look potentially to an alternative way of doing real estate. So all these other things don't really keep me up at night. I do get concerned as an industry if we take our eye off serving the consumer, serving the client in the best way possible, we will damage ourselves because we will intentionally interfere with that relationship we have with the client.
Well, I remember listening to something recently that you were on. I think it was a podcast that you had said that, disruptors have a hard time breaking through right now, because you have that agent-client relationship, and clients want that relationship with an agent. But if you make it difficult to have that, consumer interface there with their agent, then disruptors are going to break through. Am I saying that correct?
Yeah, no, I think about it, and again, this isn't necessarily a black and white issue of like exclusive listings, non-exclusive listings, right? But if I'm a consumer and I'm like, okay, if I sign up with Jay as my agent, but Jay only has access to this many listings because everyone's now hoarding them, right? Themselves, so now I've got to sign up with 8 different agents in any given market. And it's kind of a first come, first serve. And whoever finds me the house win. I mean, that's going to deliver a very poor customer experience if we're all out there like 7 different car dealerships trying, as the person's going down Miracle Mile and we're saying, no, buy a Buick. No, buy a GMC. No, buy a Cadillac. It's not a good experience, right? And the way I look at it too is think about streaming, right? We were all excited when Netflix came out and then Amazon Prime and then HBO Max and all the different ones. And now we all cut the cable and now we're like, wouldn't it be cool if someone bundled all of these things together? You wouldn't have to have all these separate apps for Hulu and Peacock and everything. But here's an industry, we're actually talking about debundling. We're talking about actually making it harder on the consumer, making the consumer go to numerous places to see what's on the market as opposed to the way that we do it now. That's what concerns me, is that we make it harder on the consumer to actually buy and sell real estate. And that's when they say, you know what, this relationship isn't as sticky as it used to be in the past.
I think it's absolutely insane. I mean, we can get off on that tangent all day long. Obviously we all have our thoughts, but there's a lot of I will say negative consequences that you speak about when you really think this through. Is this where we really want to head?
Correct.
That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So let's talk about the future a little bit. And I want to know your particular vision for home services. And I would like to know how that differs from your predecessors, right? You want to forge your own path. So what's your vision for home services?
Yeah, it's really kind of a return to our roots. Our DNA when Home Services was founded, and really, in your marketplace, Fox and Roach was founded under these same DNA principles. And that's why it was always such a natural fit when Fox and Roach became part of Home Services, which is we believe that the consumer, and it's not just based on a, theoretical belief, the data supports it. The consumer is always looking for, look, in this emotional, significant financial process that we go through buying, selling a house, how do we simplify it? How do we make it easier? How do we make the steps not quite feel so divergent from one another? So that full service business model to where as a consumer, I can get everything that I need in a singular place is, I think, a really powerful concept. And if you look at what other quote unquote disruptors are trying to do and what they're saying they're doing outwardly, they're all saying this as if it's something new and revolutionary. You'll hear the words like seamless. Oh, we're acquiring this company because we want to advance the seamless transaction. Rocket buying Redfin, Rocket buying Mr. Cooper. They're all trying to duplicate this model because they see how attractive it is to the consumer. So for us at Home Services, what we really want to do is to say, look, we have physically, for a number of years, we have physically done that model really well. Meaning if I went into one of our brokerage offices, you had professional real estate agents, you had a mortgage officer, you had a title person, you had an insurance person, right? But so often now the consumer agent relationship is also transacting in that digital sphere. So how do we take what we've physically done over the last several decades and bring that into a digital space so we're meeting the agent and we're meeting the consumer where they are right now? And that's really where we're trying to revolutionize what we do. And we're leaning in through investments and human resources and all kinds of stuff to bring in the right people to build that out so that the job of the agent actually becomes easier. I think we have asked agents to juggle so many balls in the transaction and to be that ringleader. And you'll always be that ringleader. But can we just take a little bit of that pressure off and make the team around you a really supportive team so that it works better for you and for the consumer? That's the mark that we're all trying to leave here, is to take what we've always done physically, bring that into the digital space. So as an agent and a consumer, this is a really easier way to do real estate.
It's always ease of function, right? It doesn't matter if you're operating an iPhone, if you're trying to get on Netflix and trying to find a show that you want, right? It's always ease of function. If you're selling real estate, it's the same thing. People want simplicity and they want stuff to work. They want reliability. Yeah. And I think that really goes into it. I want to talk about what we're seeing happen, not only in our industry, but this is across business sectors. You see mergers and acquisitions happening in every facet of American business. Real estate is no different from that. Do you see that as a good thing, a bad thing, or a necessary evil for continuing to grow and change?
I see it as an inevitability. And the reason for that is if you look at other industries, anytime there are antitrust efforts that come in, whether that's through federal regulators, state regulators, or outside legal pressures, right? When antitrust pressures are put onto an industry, what you typically find is the inverse happens, meaning instead of it, its intent is to flourish, competition. What typically happens is you see consolidation. So you've seen it in railroads, you've seen it in airlines, you've seen it in the telecom industry, you've seen it in the media. I mean, think about how many media companies have merged over the last decade, right? So you always see this kind of, this thing happen. And part of it is because as more erroneous rules and pressures are put onto an industry, the resources in order to continue to be successful, that requires that you share that load a little bit. And so it's an inevitability that you start to see that happen. Now, what I remember from like my law firm days was that you used to have law firms of all sizes, boutique, middle, and large. And over time, what we saw happen is you either got really big or you got boutique-y, right? And you found out, like, this is our niche, this is what we're going to do. It's the middle person, that small mid-size, that really gets squeezed out. And so as I look forward into our industry, yes, I think the M&A action will continue. Some of that will be brokerage related, brokerages merging. Some of it will just be other brokerages, acquiring businesses that help complete the experience that they provide. But it doesn't always mean biggest is best. I was at a couple of years ago, I was at a trivia thing, and I found this fascinating. The trivia question was, who serves the most steaks in the U.S.? Like, what restaurant serves the most steaks in the U.S. on an annual basis? It was Waffle House, right? Now, if you ask like all of people in an audience, like, where's your favorite place to get a steak? No one's going to say Waffle House, right? And so the idea of like biggest is always best is not necessarily true. And so I think you got to be mindful. It can't be growth just for the sake of growth. If there's a growth opportunity that actually makes you in a position to serve the consumer better, awesome. Those are the ones you want to look at. But growth for the sake of growth, I think you end up getting into a lot of trouble. And we have seen that over the years, not just in our industry, but with others too, where you end up having to shed weight at some point because you got too big and it really didn't fit your strategic vision.
Does there come a point in time where, it's always the big fish eating the little fish until the point where there's nothing left to eat anymore,
Yeah, I use the line like sameness is spreading, right? And so that's oftentimes what we see happen is the differentiation that different competitors used to bring to the experience. Like, hey, I like working here because it feels different. It feels that. When you see a lot of M&A action happen within an industry, what happens is a lot of sameness ends up getting spread. And so I think for us, at Home Services and then down to each one of our amazing brokerage operations as well is how do we make sure that we don't fall victim to that? How do we make sure that we don't unintentionally fall to that where we just become the same as everybody else and there really isn't any differentiation between these different competitors because you just get down to 3 or 4 and that's all it is and everyone's basically the same.
Yep. Well, let's talk about some of those differentiators because is there one new tool or platform that you're excited about coming down the line shortly that maybe you can share a little bit about or speak about a little bit for the agent?
Yeah, I'll talk generally only because there's always these NDAs that are in place on this type of stuff. But what I do want to acknowledge is I think, and again, we are absolutely guilty of this as well too. So past models and I think past ways that we did technology was I thought of it sometimes as that one drawer that we all have in our kitchen that you're like, oh God, I don't want to open it, but I know what I'm looking for is in there. That was how you did it, right? You just threw as much stuff into a drawer that you possibly could. You put as much technology out there. You didn't really follow adoption and you were always looking for point solutions, like which point solution had the most bells and whistles. As I have spent time listening to our real estate professionals over the last several years, the overwhelming feedback that I have gotten is to say, look, we're not actually after the most bells and whistles. What we want is simplicity. It's back to that simple word again, right? We want to be able to get all of our stuff in one platform, one place, right? Let's make it easy. Most of our folks are not looking to spend 25 hours a week embedded in a very deep CRM. They just I want to go in, I want to do what I need to do, and I want to get out, and I want to go to the same place when I need to do some marketing on a listing. I want to go to the same place when it's time to do a transaction and actually, process some paperwork as well too. So what we are working on at Home Services is more of that singular experience from a technology, not looking for the best, these individual point solutions that feel very different from one another, but how do we give the agent a singular place to go to do their business? And that's where we're heading, and I'm really, really excited about it.
That truly speaks to how agents, I would say the overwhelming majority of agents feel. Just make it simple, easy to use, and let me go about my day and about my business. So,
and it's the way I look at AI, right? Like all of it should be designed to make things easier so I can spend more time as a real estate professional being human with my clients, right? Most of us aren't in this business because I like to be staring at a computer screen 12 hours a day and really digging into the code behind all of these different systems and stuff. No, I want to do the business that I have to do over here so that I have more time to prospect, more time to be with my clients, more time to be human with them. That's what I think is the overall driver of what we're trying to do.
And let's talk about that humanity because AI, is infiltrating everything that we do right now. And, there are definite obvious pros to having AI. There are some cons. So how do agents continue to stay relevant as AI pushes more and more into our daily lives and our industry?
Yeah, I think the way that I look at it is that it will eventually become embedded in what most of us use on a daily basis, our cars, our phones, the tools that we use in our profession. And it would almost be like now saying, how is the internet going to impact our daily lives, right? Like you and I we're on the internet right now doing this interview and stuff, but we didn't sit and marvel at it for 12 minutes before we got started, right? And so we're in the infancy of this, but we're going to get 3 or 4 or 5 years down the road, and AI is just going to be part of what we do. I was at the RIS Media Conference a couple months ago, and I said, I feel like probably in 5 years, we're going to look back at how often we said the word AI, and it will be the equivalent of someone today who still says www before they give you the website address, right? And so it's just going to be part of what we do. And when I look at the consumer use of the real estate professional over the last 40 years, what we've seen is that these disruptive forces that we thought would change it, right? So there was a point where we feared the internet because, geez, if a consumer can get listings online, what do they need me as the agent for? What we see now is that more people use a real estate professional today than pre-internet. More people use a real estate professional today before the portals came out. So when I look at AI, I don't think that's a disruptor as far as getting between us and the agent and the consumer. What it does is say, look, if I can take a 200-page inspection report and have my AI assistant go through it and give me the 10 things that are most important for me to, work with the listing agent on, that gives me an hour back of my life to go out and do something more human with my client. So I look at it as a net positive. Those that use it correctly will find it to be very beneficial. Just like if you were trying to be an agent today without the internet. Like, I know I've got a website, but I'm not using it. I'm going to print off all the MLS listings and drive them around to all my clients, right? It would be highly inefficient. And I think that's probably where we find ourselves in 3 to 5 years from now. It's just another efficiency tool in our toolbox.
A friend of mine, actually a colleague of mine, shout out to Bob Kelly in my office. He actually uploaded an inspection report that was, I think it was like either 160 or 180 pages, and had Gemini just break it down and give the important points to everything. And that's where you can see everything is headed. That process more simple. And like you said, that kind of background noise is just going to be baked into what we do every day.
Correct.
So in your opinion, what should new agents that are entering our business focus on in order to be successful in today's real estate climate?
Yeah, the biggest mistake that we typically see with newer agents is the getting ready to get ready syndrome, right? So it's I need to take this one more class. I need to do this one more thing. I need to do this one more thing. If the worst problem you have as a new agent is you actually have someone raise their hand and say, hey, Jay, yeah, I'm ready to buy, or hey, Jay, I'm ready to sell. Every one of our companies is equipped to absolutely support you, even if you are new to the business and this will be your first actual transaction you're handling on behalf of a client. And so I would much rather see new people into the business immediately start getting their name out there, letting them know what they're doing. You have a team around you, whether you're an individual agent or part of a team, you have an entire team around you. That is when we talk about differentiators, I think one of the biggest differentiators in our business model is the fact that we have amazing local leadership, right? We have an incredible local president within our brands. We have incredible local regionals. We have incredible local branch leaders, right? All of them are there to serve the agent. And so you have to tap into that. So it's really breaking the mold of the getting ready to get ready. Yes, we want you properly trained, but all of our companies have the right orientation and the training courses and everything else. We would not release you upon the world until we believe that you are ready, but you are fully supported behind you and stuff. And so the idea is, the whole idea of don't be a secret agent. It really does come down to that. You have all of these people, all of us have in our lives. They love us. They want to see us successful. Let them know this is what I'm doing. I'm ready to help people. If there's anyone I can speak to, please feel free to pass my name along to them. Like those are the types of things that it is. There's no magic pill. There's no, silver bullet. It's just get out there, let people know that you're ready to help them, and the right people will actually support you in that process.
I appreciate you saying that, because I remember those days. I mean, I remember getting ready to get ready. And I remember agents who were more seasoned asking me, like, what are you working on? And I'll be like, oh, I'm working on this, I'm working on that. And one agent in particular said to me, no. Like, stop getting ready to get ready is essentially what he was saying. Just get out there and do it. Right. And
when we would go through like when we'd have a group of agents that would complete, let's say, their 8-week class of, training and stuff like that, and they were live agents during that process. Undoubtedly, every single time, the most successful ones would always have some type of story that was very similar. It was, I was sitting at a coffee shop and I put a sticker on the back of my laptop that said, ask me about real estate. Or I always wore the grocery store, my name badge that said I was with, Fox and Roach or whatever. And someone would stop and ask me that. I mean, that was every single time we would hear those types of stories. It's not to say that the things that we do in the digital sphere about getting things out to consumers and e-newsletters and all, those are all important as well too. But it is that basically blocking and tackling. People, the great thing we're blessed with, people like talking about real estate. Whether it's even when we're in a depressed market, people want to know, like, hey, what do you think my home's worth? Or what's happening in my neighborhood right now? They want to talk about this. We are not sitting at a coffee shop saying, ask me about life insurance. This is something people actually want to talk about, and we should always lean into that.
And I do think that that's one of the things as agents, as new agents, we're so concerned about how we're going to look to so-and-so. If I put myself out there, how's that going to look? And at this point, when you accumulate the battle scars of, being in the industry for a certain amount of years, you just stop caring. Right. And if I could tell new agents one thing, it's like, don't care about what people think. If they're not into what you're putting out there, you move on to the next person. Essentially, you got to put yourself out there. you know?
It's exactly right. And I know like so many of us, when we first start, our big fear is like, what if someone asks me how long I've been doing this? And I always tell them they won't, they never do. Like there's probably 1 in a million that have actually asked that question. And if they do, you say, yes, I'm so thankful to be part of Fox and Roach, and I have this amazing team with me. And you go through everything that supports you. And by then people don't matter and stuff, right? Like I've been on the job in my current role for 7, 8 months at this point. No one has asked me, Trish, how long have you been the CEO of HomeServices? It's like you got to get in there and start working.
Yeah, and I mean, use that to your advantage too. Like being newer to the business, you could simply say, be authentic about it and say, yes, I don't have a lot of clients at this point, but that means that I'm willing to run through a wall for you.
It's exactly right.
All my time is dedicated to you, and you can use that to your advantage. So I want to ask you, if you were delivering the State of the Union address for HomeServices of America, how would you describe the current state of our union?
Yeah, I'm really grateful. And we talked about this in May. We assembled all of our company leadership in May. And what we talked about is, look, everyone in this business, and it's one of the things I really respect about it, most of us who have that kind of entrepreneur background, business-minded background, we're not really ever looking over our shoulder. We're always looking ahead. What's the next thing to tackle? What's the next thing to tackle? But we took a moment to say, look, let's appreciate what we've gone through over the last 5 years, right? We went through a pandemic where in the beginning, at least, everyone was like, are we ever going to sell a house again? Then it took off like a rocket ship, but that had its own stresses, right? The number of disappointed buyers that we had to deal with, the number of sellers that we had to work with that began to have unreasonable expectations around what it meant to sell a home. Then as fast as it went up, the spigot was turned intentionally, right, to fight inflation. And we had to go through that. Then we had industry changing litigation, right? What does it mean when you have billions of dollars of verdicts out there? Then we went through the settlement. Then we went through rule changes. Take a moment to appreciate the resilience that all of us, and I mean at every level, from home services to our operating companies to our agents, everybody, the resilience that they showed deserves a moment of reflection just to say, look what you did. And now this is a chance to turn the page, because if you live in crisis mode too long, it creates burnout, right? And you start making poor health decisions. You start making decisions based on short-term gain versus long-term vision. So we intentionally turn the page. We are back now looking to the long-term vision of this company. We're back to saying, what is the model? What do we need to lean into that is going to sustain us for the next decade, to put us out in front for the next decade? And we've talked a little bit about what those things are. Some of our original DNA, some of the way that we're going to deploy technology, and really kind of lean into the way that agents and consumers interact today as well, too. So I am highly encouraged about where we are today because of what we went through over the last 5 years. We've come out very strong. Not everybody made it through. Take a moment to appreciate that, shake it off, and then let's get back to work.
So is that going to be a sneak peek as part of your convention speech coming up in Nashville this year? I
think it's probably a little bit of it, and Vincent Lacey will always be the star of that. And yes, but it really is. I mean, even from our independent franchisee owners and stuff, part of the network, like, the fact that everybody came through that, because, again, the Mark Twain quote, what is it? The rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated. Like, there was a lot of prediction of death over the last 5 years from outsiders looking into our business. And so I'm very grateful for what we all did. And through that, the agent-consumer relationship remained the top priority. And that's why we came through it. And again, that's the part. You can't lose sight of that. We lose sight of that, that's when bad things will happen.
It is truly amazing to think about the past 5 years and everything that we've been through. I mean, I know that I think, I go back to 2007, and I think you were kind of a similar time frame where you're getting into the industry and, it's bonkers. And then all of a sudden the Great Recession happens.
Correct.
And I'm out there as a new agent being like, hello, like somebody turned the lights off and left the room, And now we hit the pandemic, but I can't remember a time that has moved so fast with so many moving parts and so many problems, unique problems. I mean, when else did we have a pandemic that affected us the way that it did? Yeah. And moving into the lawsuits and all of that within the past 5 years. So to your point, we've been through a whole lot, and hopefully we can now start to look forward to a long-term vision. So so now that you've been in your role for a little while now, what is the best part of your job?
It's really, and I'm not playing up to the host, but it is really opportunities like this. It's opportunities to speak with people throughout our network. Last week, I was out at BHHS California's event. A couple weeks before that, I was at one of our events for Harry Norman. The opportunity to be with our agents and talk to them about the vision of home services, get their feedback, hear what's going on in their world is without question my favorite part of the job. And it's been at every level. When I was starting out just as the general counsel attorney for Reese Nichols, my favorite part of that job was going to sales meetings every Tuesday and talking to agents and quickly learning that, I could not be the department of no. I had to be the department of how do we get this done for you, right? And so that constant interaction from day one of being out with agents, hearing how the world works, how the transactions are. I remember really stupidly thinking at one point, oh, I bet when I start there, for a couple months, I'll answer these questions that agents have about transactions, and then I'll just repeat myself for the rest of my life. And then quickly realized after a couple of weeks, like every one of these deals is dramatically different, right? Because humans are involved. And so the chance to be out with our team members is beyond my favorite part of this job. And any job I've had within home services, that's been my favorite part, and it remains my favorite part.
So what is the biggest challenge as CEO of Home Services of America?
Yeah, I think, I think it's in any role. And I know you experience this as well, too, with your clients, right? Which is, how do I be present for as many people as possible, but not to the point where I make myself ineffective, right? And so every Monday I send out an email and I to our company leaders, and I include a quote. And like the one that I sent, I'm going to send actually for this coming week is from Seneca. And it says, the person that is everywhere is nowhere. The constant say yes to everything, but you also want to make sure that you're spending most of your time being effective for the business, because that's what you are there to do.
If I can, we're going to wind down here. You don't know this, but I end this usually on a topical note. Usually I ask an offbeat question, but today I'd like to just have our agents get to know you a little bit. So as a relatively new CEO, I'd like to end by asking you a couple rapid fire questions if I can, and talk about some of your favorite things in life, if that's okay.
Okay, let's do it. That sounds great.
So what's your favorite band?
Fleetwood Mac, probably. It varies. It goes back and forth sometimes, but if I had to historically say one, I love Fleetwood Mac, and somehow I've been able to pass it on to my oldest daughter as well too. Even their age group in their early 20s like Fleetwood Mac. Yeah.
Okay, so your favorite current streaming show that you watch?
I just completed it, and I just watched Task on HBO. Amazing. I mean, it was the same writer of Mayor of Easttown, which was amazing too, but Task was fantastic. Love that show.
So we just finished Task as well. And of course, Task is based out of Delco.
Delco, baby.
Very, very Philly centric. And when Mayor of Easttown was happening, Kate Winslet was wearing a North Penn t-shirt in one of the scenes, which is where I went to high school, which was super cool. So yes, awesome. huge fan of the show Task. All right. So favorite book for agents to read?
So the books that I will say this, and I always say I'm always more drawn to non-real estate, industry books, podcasts, or whatever, because I think that there's a lot to learn from outside the industry. The book that I talk about most when I'm in front of agents, because I think there's lessons out of it, is Blink by Malcolm Gladwell. So much of what you do is psychology, therapy type work. There's a ton of stuff in Blink that you can bring to the world and way that we interact with our consumers.
All right. Now, this one may take some thought.
Okay.
Your favorite historical figure?
Favorite historical figure? I haven't been.
You had mentioned Seneca earlier.
Yeah. You know what? I would throw out Seneca. And again, I'm not like a big reader of the Stoics, but I love the author Ryan Holiday, who then brings the Stoics kind of like it makes it digestible for a simpleton like me. Like I'm not sitting around reading Meditations by Marcus Aurelius myself, but I will read a Ryan Holiday book that interprets that for me and stuff. So yeah, I mean, I would think those historical, the lessons of the Stoics, I think, are more relevant today than they have been in a really long time, because we are bombarded with so much, and controlling yourself, controlling how you react to things is really, really.
I am currently reading the Daily Stoic as we speak, and I'm a huge Ryan Holiday fan. People on this podcast are probably sick of me talking about my affinity with Stoicism, but that's an awesome answer. So, all right. So
reading the book Ego is the Enemy was really changing for me. When I read Ryan Holiday's book Ego is the Enemy, it helps you think of like, am I doing this for my ego, or am I doing this to actually serve others? And that it's almost like a good reminder book to read every couple years to make sure you're still on the right path.
Yeah, he's excellent. He's excellent. And like you said, he makes it digestible. You don't have to go read meditations if you don't want to. So,
Right.
So your favorite podcast to listen to?
I mentioned Malcolm Gladwell before too and stuff. And so I find Revisionist History, the one he does, is really great. I've pulled a lot of stuff out there that is some really good life and real estate lessons in there. That one as well too.
All right. So last one here. What is your favorite U.S. city to visit?
You know what? So obviously, Kansas City, lived in Dallas, lived here in the Northwest Florida area and stuff. My favorite big city to visit is Chicago. Just because I think the way it sits on the lake and the river right through it and stuff. And my son is big. We took him there for his 10th birthday and did all the museums and stuff. So it's a great city to visit. Always fun stuff to do there.
I love.
And plus, if I went to Philly in my Chiefs gear and stuff, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna get tossed out.
You're gonna be in trouble. You might need a new CEO after that.
Yeah.
So I was gonna torture you and ask you what your favorite home services real estate brand was, but my wife said that was very inappropriate. So
I've got to say, I love all my children equally, right? Yeah. So yeah.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate your time today. Like I said, I know you're a very busy man. It's always a pleasure to get to know you and what you're going to be doing for us as agents now into the distant future. So I really appreciate your time, and I can't wait to see you at convention and stop and say hi if I can.
That would be great. Look forward to seeing you in Nashville. And Jay, thank you so much for having me on. Would love to do it again.
That was the conversation with Chris Kelly. It was great to talk to Chris and get to know him a little bit. Here are a few takeaways that I had from our time together. Number one, I was really pleased to hear Chris talk about our tech and where things are headed with AI and how it's there to supplement what you're doing as an agent. It should be in the background to help your business be easier, more reliable, and give you more free time to be out there with your clients. Chris says the goal of home services in the near future is to make life easier for agents, to simplify things, to make sure that you have that reliable resource in order to do your job well and to simplify the process. And I love that. I love hearing that because that's what we all want. Number two, when I asked what keeps Chris up at night right now, he responded by saying it's how one brokerage may do what's best for them, but may not be best for the entire industry, especially with the sharing of information and data and how that will ultimately affect the entire industry and consumers and change the way that we do business. And makes a lot of sense from my perspective. Exclusive listings is a hot topic right now, and what we're seeing out there, the repercussions are great. And I think Chris speaks to that very well, and I really like what he had to say about that when it comes to sharing data, sharing information, how it's going to affect every brokerage that's out there, and we're racing towards more litigation, as Chris puts it. I agree wholeheartedly. Some of these decisions may have huge consequences industry-wide, and I think they need to be thought through a little bit better. Last but not least, just like any other company out there, it all starts at the top, and getting to know Chris a little bit through the course of this podcast and talking to him prior to recording this, you could just tell that we're in good hands. Chris is a very sharp, very smart guy, and also very personable. You can tell that Chris goes out of his way to make himself accessible, and I greatly appreciate that. It's not every day that you get to meet the CEO of such a major company, but I enjoyed my time with Chris, and like I said, I think we're in very good hands. That was the podcast this week. We will be back in another couple of weeks with a new topic, a new guest, and as always, if you want to hear something that we haven't covered yet, please reach out to me, jason.ostrowski@foxroach.com. And if you haven't liked or subscribed to the podcast or left us a review yet, please do so. It helps us to reach more people. Once again, this is Jason Ostrowski saying stay safe out there, stay selling, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Everything Real Estate Podcast.